Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
For 3 years, I worked at the post office. You're just reading a number and putting it in the slots. These days, a working woman must have a skill. So I enrolled in the HIM program. I took a couple of classes and I really enjoyed it. And then I just completed my certificate for coding. I really enjoyed my instructors. It was really exciting, and now I love my job.
Hello everyone, and thanks again for joining us for Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. On the chart here, we've got a high wind watch out for this area of the southeast coast, and that is for Monday night and into Tuesday morning. As the next storm rolls up into the area there at that time, winds could possibly gust 40 to 60 miles per hour. And then up here along the Alaska Range, we've got wind advisories out for the entire area there from the western Kuskokwim Valley all the way back to the east. And looking for southeast winds of 60 miles an hour, could possibly gust to 60 miles per hour, mainly through the passes, and that mostly through the Tote Cutoff area, or mostly west of the Tote Cutoff, and mainly through the passes. And then back to the west here, St. Lawrence Island, on up to the Bering Strait coast. That's a winter weather advisory for snow and blowing snow. Winds will increase, gusts to 55 miles per hour with some new snow expected to fall there. So that will reduce visibilities down to a quarter mile at times, actually for tonight, later tonight, and then continuing through tomorrow night. Anyway, onto the satellite imagery here. Yesterday we had a front here, the next system, pushing up across Kodiak Island, clouds spilling into Bristol Bay, and then back across the west, the whole thing sliding northward. And then there was some clouds and snow here over the southwest interior, extending onto the northeast. Out to the west, really not a lot going on out there, just kind of some cloudiness here over the Bering Sea and the Aleutian areas there. Winds light and precipitation pretty sparse out in this area, as well as in over the interior. And for today, you can see that system now lifted northward late last night and into today, kind of slowing down, dissipating over the southern interior, and then a break occurring here across south central Alaska, the North Gulf Coast, back out to the southwest. Made for a pretty nice day, mostly sunny skies here across south central Alaska. The front edging its way eastward, so the rain changing over to showers this afternoon. Yakutat picking up about 1 1/3 inches in the last 24 hours, while Cordova had a lot less, just 1/4 inch of rain, as well as Seward, and then over at Juneau about 1/3 inch falling there. So amounts not really all that great. And then the next system here spreading clouds up into Kodiak Island, back along the Alaska Peninsula. And this system's stronger than the last couple of ones that came rolling in from the south. And you can see that again. Already we'll be spreading rainfall into southern Kodiak Island and along the Alaska Peninsula. That should occur over the next few hours. And on the chart today, there's that weakening front lifting northward, the one from yesterday. This trough, very weak, just pushing along and to the north of the Alaska Range. There was a little bit of flurry activity going on from well, up the Parks Highway from about the Igloo down to maybe Chalitna, but really nothing measurable at all, just flurries. Same thing here, scattered areas of southeast Copper River Basin zone. Dry up over the interior all the way to the Arctic coast, and back to the west we had this narrow band of moisture here, flurries and light snow from the central Arctic coast right down in across the Selawik Valley, and then that got a little more extensive here across the western Yukon Delta, Nunivak Island area. Some isolated snow showers out toward the Pribilofs, and we had behind this front showers from the North Gulf Coast right down across Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, on out to the eastern Aleutians, and things get really isolated and very widely scattered, just about no activity at all from Adak and Atka out to the west or even up over the Bering Sea. Windier conditions, gales out for the St. Lawrence Island area here, and again this snow will begin to pull westward, and so look for increasing wind and snow, and again for the winter weather advisory there for St. Lawrence Island back up across the Bering Strait areas, periods of snow here, Nunivak Island right up across Norton Sound, the Seward Peninsula, and possibly into the Noatak Valley area. Kotzebue should see a little snow tonight, and then that band of flurries and fog extends right up to the Wainwright, Barrow, Atasuk area. Otherwise, variably cloudy here over the northeast interior, right down to the Kuskokwim Valley. Here's the next front pushing northward, and heaviest wind and rain coming into the Kodiak Island area, eventually working up to the southern Kenai Peninsula late tonight and into tomorrow. Should see rainfall increase here along the North Gulf Coast, and also across the Panhandle, winds and rain increasing there as well. Pretty good gradient, got high pressure here over British Columbia, and as this front approaches, that's going to put the squeeze on the atmosphere a little bit there, so look for those winds to increase as well. Otherwise, scattered rain and snow showers for the eastern Aleutians, dry for the Pribilofs, and winds not much of a problem at all, and some scattered activity out here over the central and western areas. Looking ahead to tomorrow, this low center pulls northward to right near the Chignik area there, so strong winds and rain, possibly heavy at times here for Kodiak Island, and that becomes a little more showery here for the North Gulf Coast as the main front again pulls northward and dissipates. Hardly any moisture with it left at all once it gets past the North Gulf Coast here, but there could be some light rain or snow areas of light rain or snow up along the Alaska Range there. And then rain over the northern Panhandle. This next system coming northward quite rapidly, a strong southerly jet, and that'll bring the heavy wind and rain into the southern southeast coast tomorrow afternoon. And then we've got snow and blowing snow here from the Bering Strait down across St. Lawrence Island. Just some flurries now for the Yukon Delta coast, Nunivak Island area, and up to the northwest. Much of the North Slope, look for light winds and some patchy fog on the eastern Arctic coast. Could be a few flurries here around the Koyukuk Valley area, possibly say in and around the Bettles area, but again, amounts not amounting to anything at all, nothing measurable, just flurries. And the usual scattered showers out over the Aleutians and southeast Bering Sea here. Looking at Tuesday's forecast, this low weakens and pulls up to the northwest to about this position Tuesday afternoon. So showers here for the coast into the southwest interior areas, scattered showers also for the Alaska Peninsula, dry for the Aleutians, and winds northerly. Small craft advisories out there in that area. And then that other system comes rapidly again under that being driven northward by a strong southerly jet, weakens and pulls into the Copper River Basin Tuesday afternoon, and trough swings into the Panhandle here, mostly aloft, and looks like some pretty gusty winds. Got good gales in the forecast there over the inside waters, and pretty good showers will begin to taper off late in the day. Looks like a break back out here to the west, so that'll get pushed on through. And so by late Tuesday afternoon, definitely Tuesday evening, things will begin to dry out a little bit. And then the next system down here to the south. Temperatures across the Panhandle today, we're in the 30s to lower 40s, 43 at Sitka, one of the warmer locations, 42 down at Metlakatla, as well as Cape Decision, 37 in Juneau, about the same in Yakutat. Cordova up to 40. Seward topped out at 43 today with 33 in Kenai. Homer right at 40. 36 there at Kodiak State Airport. Akiak had 40 degrees. Talkeetna 28. and that's Denali Park up there rising up to just about 40 this afternoon, but Fairbanks -3, and with some wind, Delta Junction was able to reach 22, but Northway, calm conditions, -1. And farther up to the north there's Fort Yukon at -4, with Bettles and Arctic Village at -9, and colder here over the North Slope, but not as cold as it was yesterday. Umiat Airfield at -18. Yesterday at this time they were at 37 below, and temperatures a little below zero along the Arctic coast, except Point Lay at -18, Kivalina -18, and Shishmaref at 24 below. Good 28 degrees warmer south side of the peninsula there at Nome, 0 at McGrath, 12 degrees there at Mountain Village, 16 down at Macoriac, and -2 out at Savunga. Pribilofs here, both St. George and St. Paul, 29 degrees, mid-30s central and western Aleutians, upper 30s for the Fox Islands, and mid-30s to lower 40s here. Well, actually for the peninsula, mid-30s to lower 40s. The 40s occurring up there over northeast Bristol Bay. And for the lows tonight, 30s for the Panhandle with 20s to lower 30s here, south central Alaska. Areas colder in the Copper River Basin, and below zero for the upper Yukon Valley, North Slope, and the Arctic coast. And we've got 30s here for the Alaska Peninsula, and near or a little below freezing for the Aleutians. Highs for tomorrow, again, continued the mild pattern here. Lower 40s Kodiak Island and northeast Bristol Bay, with 30s to near 40 here for the south central Alaska area. About the same here for the Panhandle as you saw today, and continued warming, as you can see, right up into the Brooks Range, warming up significantly, and temperatures right around zero for the high there for the Arctic coast. And for flying weather, we've got, of course, with the system coming up, IFR to the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, back down on the east side of Kodiak Island. Another batch here sliding up across Prince of Wales Island from the south and the southeast Bering Sea. Expect IFR in that area down to the Alaska Peninsula, also from St. Lawrence Island with snow and blowing snow there up through the Bering Strait, and looks like kind of an IFR day for the Arctic coast, and areas of marginal VFR out to the west. Passes Anatuvik and Avigan once again will be VFR for both of those passes. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, IFR on both eastern entrances. That same pattern, keeping the forecast the same for Rainy as well, with the low side on the eastern entrance. Windy, marginal VFR in the south entrance, otherwise VFR through the pass and to the north. Isabel, VFR, Mentasta, occasionally marginal. Tanita, marginal VFR, possible on the eastern entrance. And Portage, another IFR kind of day coming up for that area. Chilkoot and White, look for a gradual deterioration of conditions from marginal VFR to IFR, probably by into the afternoon. And for the freezing levels at the surface, just south of the Pribilofs here, up into the southwest, cutting to the east, and then down the Panhandle, and those that southerly flow pulling some warmer air up 2,000 feet up north of Yakutat, and then about 4,000 to 6,000 feet down across the southern Panhandle. Icing with that, again, a lot of moisture coming northward, so occasional widespread moderate turbulence, 7,000 to 19,000 feet here over the Panhandle, those freezing levels rising, and 2,000 to 11,000 feet areas of here for the North Gulf Coast, back down into Kodiak Island, and possible light rime icing here from the Bering Strait across St. Lawrence Island, Nunivak Island, mostly below about 8,000 feet. And for the jet stream here again, south to north flow, 120 knots right up to the eastern Gulf Coast areas, with ridging right through here. And then for 9,000 feet, we've got east-southeasterly 65 knots blowing across southern Cook Inlet and Kamishak Bay, and up to 50 knots there on the southern southeast coast. Otherwise, north to northeast, 30 knots over the northern Bering Sea, and then in about that 15 to 25 knot range on down to the south to the Aleutians. For 3,000 feet, again, strong winds around this low, pulling up to the Alaska Peninsula. East-southeast, 50 knots across the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, in across the Alaska Range. About 25 knots into the Susitna Valley. Easterlies, 40 knots on the eastern Arctic coast, much lighter on the west side, and 25 to 30 knot winds here along the Panhandle. Turbulence-wise, occasional moderate chop from the Queen Charlottes up across Prince of Wales Island, into the central southeast coast, and a pretty good chance of seeing some severe, especially for small aircraft, east side of Kodiak Island, across the Barrens there, Fognak Island, in across Kamishak Bay and Iliamna Lake. Otherwise, moderate chop, the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island, and eastern Arctic coast could be a little bumpy. After the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Convective activity is popping up. Or maybe there's ice in the clouds. Or low ceilings. Can you get through it safely? Or should you be on the ground waiting out the weather? As an instrument-rated pilot, these are questions you've got to be able to answer. Something to keep in mind anytime you're getting radar images off the web. Get the national composite image first, before you look at individual radar sites. That way you'll be suspicious if an individual site doesn't show weather you saw on the national composite. But raw information isn't going to help unless you know what it means. You've got to be able to interpret as well as acquire the information. You've got to develop a three-dimensional view of the weather because so much of it is influenced by what's happening in the upper atmosphere. Be aware when you start your preliminary weather planning that the Weather Channel and weather maps in newspapers are only concerned with surface weather. If you want a real synopsis of what's going on, you have to know what's happening at altitude too. We know that upper-level winds generally flow from west to east. But the winds don't flow in a straight line. In some places, the flow swings south, in others, north. The flows that swing south are upper atmosphere troughs. The ones that swing north are upper atmosphere ridges. These curves affect the weather going on underneath them. An upper-level trough tends to make the weather underneath worse, and a ridge tends to bring good weather. The best source of information on upper air movement is the 500 millibar or 18,000-foot chart. It clearly shows the airflow pattern at altitude that's affecting the weather below. Without upper air support, such as a trough, surface lows may be relatively calm. A trough can also bring clouds and precip to an area that shows no frontal activity on the surface charts. To make sense of all this and understand how changing atmospheric conditions may affect their flights, instrument pilots have to be part-time meteorologists. Well, admittedly, most pilots don't care anything about meteorology. All we care about is answering the question, can I make it? Can I get where I'm going? Well, that's something that no briefer can tell you, because even if they know the weather, they don't know the capabilities or limitations of you as a pilot or your aircraft. That's why you have to be able to interpret meteorological information for yourself. Making the right go, no-go decision on the ground is important. Even more important is continued evaluation of that decision in flight. Here, the challenge is deciding whether to continue, divert, or return. Our flight crew was certainly prepared for the challenge. After determining conditions supported a go flight decision, they came to the airport ready for the tactical portion of their plan.
Okay, what's the latest on the weather?
Conditions are about the same, marginal all along the route. 3 to 5 in haze most of the way, and the forecast calls for the possibility of thunderstorms in the area until 2300 Zulu.
So what else is new?
Yeah, briefer says they're starting to get some returns west to Cleveland, and it's moving in our direction.
If ceilings and visibility are high enough, we could always go VFR. That way we'll be able to see the rain shafts. If we get up high enough, we'll be able to see the buildups and go around them. I don't know, though. I don't like that 3 to 5 mile viz, though. We're going to be doing more than 2 miles a minute over the ground.
Yeah, you're right, but we don't want to file IFR and then be stuck in solid clouds either. Kind of tough to see the weather that way. Now, the tops are running up to 12,000 now, and thunderstorms will be even higher. Good news is the ceilings are broken. So if we file for 10,000, we may be in the tops from time to time, but at least we should be able to eyeball the nasty stuff.
Right you are. What about the freezing level?
Yeah, good question. Let's see. 17,000 is the lowest it gets.
Okay. Sounds good to me. It's definitely going to be cooler up there. And we'll be able to avoid most, if not all, of the haze. Now, if I can just keep us out of those clouds with hard edges, well, we should have a pretty good ride.
Let's analyze the key elements of their planning.
I don't know, though. I don't like that 3 to 5 mile viz, though. We're going to be doing more than 2 miles a minute over the ground.
What's the relation of speed to weather avoidance? Of course, it can help you avoid the weather. If the forecasts are correct, Their debonair will be safely tied down before the weather hits, while a cub flying the same route would probably find the convective activity blocking its path. But when you're trying to dodge weather and deviate around buildups, speed can make maneuvering around what you see more difficult. Consider speed and maneuverability when formulating your plans. And you always have the option of pulling back the power and reducing cruise speed. Remember, as in VFR, see and avoid is the best anti-collision strategy for dealing with convective activity.
Now the tops are running up to 12,000 now, and thunderstorms will be even higher. Good news is the ceilings are broken. So if we file for 10,000, we may be in the tops from time to time, but at least we should be able to eyeball the nasty stuff.
Right you are. Oh, what about the freezing level?
The Mark I eyeball remains the best weather avoidance tool aboard any GA aircraft. Pilots should try to fly at altitudes where they can see the weather. But sometimes cumulus clouds can build faster than you can climb. You'll need a plan if you can't stay on top. And if you fly high enough, you may run into the freezing level. You'll need an exit strategy if there's a chance of encountering icing. Know where the freezing level is, even if it's nowhere near your cruising altitude. It can help indicate whether a thunderstorm is likely to produce hail by its relation to the cloud tops. If there is a possibility of hail, avoid flying under anvils. This will generally involve deviation to the southwest, but make sure to give that side of the storm a wide berth, because that's the quadrant where the tornadoes form. And what did our pilot mean about clouds with hard edges? A cloud's appearance can help indicate its character. The harder the edges, the nastier the ride. For example, stratus clouds, characterized by their flat, layered look, indicate smooth air, with the downside of poorer visibility because of lack of air circulation. Cumulus are marked by vertical development. If the edges are wispy and indistinct, the ride will be bumpy, but not hazardous. Cumulus clouds on their way to becoming thunderstorms can build at more than 3,000 feet per minute and can give a very rough ride. Hard cauliflower edges and defined anvil tops are characteristics of the turbulent cumulonimbus, definitely a cloud to be avoided. As is this, an altocumulus standing lenticular cloud, only found in mountainous areas, usually on the lee side of a range. These have the hardest edges of all clouds and indicate extreme turbulence, especially below the cloud.
Strong southeasterly gales, 40 to 45 knots, with seas around 20 feet here out along the coast. Also got some southeast at 40 there for Clarence Strait, dropping back to about 30 knots here for the central inside waters. Lynn Canal lighter and northerly at about 20. And then on Tuesday, they'll swing around, pick up to gale force southerlies there for northern Lynn Canal with 40-knot winds in the forecast for Stevens Passage, and we're still carrying gales there for Clarence Strait. Southerlies 35 to 40 knots on the south coast, and then south and west-southwest, or west and southwest here from the north coast at about 30 to 35 knots. For Prince William Sound tomorrow, gale warnings, east 35 knots, southeast 35 for the North Gulf Coast, and then dropping back a little, coming up to 40 knots for the Barren Islands, and even stronger, almost a storm warning there for the east side of Kodiak Island. Good easterlies into Kamishak Bay, small craft advisories for Cook Inlet. And for Tuesday, still carrying minimum gales here for the east side of Kodiak Island, otherwise small craft advisories, Shelikof Strait up across Kamishak Bay. Southeast 30 for the Barren Islands and small craft advisories for the North Gulf Coast. Much lighter winds in store for Prince William Sound and northern Cook Inlet. For Bristol Bay, northeast 30 tomorrow, turning northerly here on the north side of the peninsula. Small craft advisories northwest here from Cape Saratchev to Castle Cape, and then from Castle Cape to Sitkinak, southeast 35 with 20-foot seas. For Tuesday, easterlies of 40 knots here from southwest to Kodiak Island, dropping back to about 30 knots for the southern areas of the peninsula. North side there, just southeast of 20, and small craft advisories for Bristol Bay. For the eastern Aleutians tomorrow, north to northwest, 25 knots, seas 7 to 10 feet, and north to northeast, 20 to 25 knots for the central Aleutians, and northeasterlies at about the same speed to the west. And then those swing around to the northwest, 25 to 30 knots here for the Aleutians. Seas build up to 12 feet. Central Aleutians, Adak and Atka, northwest at 25 with 10 to 13 foot seas. And north to northwest, 20 to 25 knots for the Fox Islands. For the southwest coast, northeast 30 knots tomorrow, north 25 for the Pribilofs, and then gale force northeasterlies here, St. Matthew Island zone, the northern Bering Sea, and northerly gales for St. Lawrence Island. And those gales hold through Tuesday up there and actually increase here over the northern Bering Sea around St. Matthew to 40 knots with seas building to 14 feet. North 20 for the Pribilofs, and then southeast 20 knots south of Nunivak Island. Up along the Arctic coast, we've got easterlies, brisk wind advisories there for the eastern coast, actually the central coast as well. Lighter winds here for the west side, and then back to the brisk wind advisories there from Wales to Cape Thompson. And a little bit stronger, edge it up a little, but still under gale force there. North 20 there from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort. And then we've got gales back in the picture there for the eastern Arctic coast for easterlies at 35 knots. And for tonight, again, the next big storm here pulling northward, so big increase in the wind and rain, Kodiak Island, and eventually swinging up to the North Gulf Coast. Looks like precipitation will overspread the panhandle gradually here for later tonight, after midnight probably, otherwise dry up over the interior. Still a swath of snow here in the west. And for tomorrow, that low pulls right to the peninsula there, and it stays pretty windy and wet for Kodiak, and then more showery for the North Gulf Coast. Next system, again, driving northward on that strong southerly jet, so big increase in the wind and rain, heavy at times coming into the southern panhandle. And that moves quite rapidly northward to the Copper River Basin and weakens on Tuesday. Showers will begin to taper off late in the day for the panhandle. This system out here pulls back to the west and weakens as well. Pretty mild, so scattered rain and snow showers over the southwest interior. Let's look at the weather. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.